I'll just provide a quick background to the biological inventory, but the reports are there for you to read over. The inventory follows standard scientific protocol for all the different species and habitat types that we surveyed. And some of those species and habitat types, species included nocturnal owls, amphibians, waterfowl and upland nesting birds, breeding birds, yellow rails. Also did incidental observations of mammals and monarch butterflies. And then in terms of vegetation, a vegetation survey focusing on flowering plants as well, and wetland inventory. And this was meant to build upon the natural areas assessment that the City of Winnipeg had previously provided. And this timeline followed from April to August of 2012. I wanted to provide that as a background to some of the natural areas comments that we had. Some of the results that we found from our inventory is that most species required more than one habitat type within the area, and so that included aspen and oak forest, wetland, and grassland, and that result is provided in our recommendations that we have in our document. Grassland habitat, it does make up a very large area of the areas that we surveyed on Qualico Lands. The grassland habitat, however, is dominated by non-native and invasive species. For the most part, there are native species in that area, and there are certain areas that are more dominated by native species, but in the most case, it is dominated by non-native. And that was also reflected in the city's natural areas assessment report. However, that doesn't discount the habitat that they do provide to some of the species in the area, and we did see nesting mallards in the area as well as a number of other bird species. In terms of wetland habitat, we didn't rank the quality of the wetland habitat, but we did what's called the Stewart and Cantor wetland classification, and what it basically does is rank the different habitat types, or the different types of wetlands. And the types of wetlands that we see, or we saw in Qualico Lands, are mostly non-permanent wetland types, which means that they hold water for a short period of time in the spring, and then that water tends to dry out as the seasons go on. These types of wetlands, although they provide good habitat, are very difficult to preserve in urban environments. So please keep that into perspective. I'll speak to our naturalized stormwater ponds that are in the precinct plan, and these naturalized stormwater ponds are in a number of developments in Winnipeg, Sage Creek, South Point, Bridgewater, a number of different ones. What the naturalized stormwater ponds are is an upland native grass buffer above the normal water level of the stormwater pond, and below that they support wetland species, and they're designed to do that. And they basically not only have the function of a stormwater pond, but also a natural wetland. They have water quality cleaning purposes, they support habitat, and they also provide a number of additional values. They also, somebody touched upon additional costs that you would have with managing naturalized stormwater ponds as compared to traditional stormwater ponds. And I should say that those are two different things. Naturalized stormwater ponds actually don't require any maintenance because of the natural wetland properties. They help maintain water quality because of the wetland plants. They're biologically made to do that. And this is quite different from some of the traditional stormwater ponds that we see around the city of Winnipeg that have major algal water quality problems as well as vegetation problems. And there's a cost to control those. So consider that as well too. I also wanted to talk about species that were identified under the Species at Risk Act, and I'd like to clarify some of those things. There are a couple of focus species under the Species at Risk Act, species of special concern that include the yellow rail, the northern leopard frog, and monarch butterfly. They're species of special concern. However, they're not legally protected. They're neither threatened or endangered. The bobolink is not listed under the Species at Risk Act, but it's listed under COSWIC, which is another federal government body, but it's not legally protecting. So please keep that in mind. We also wanted to enforce in our inventory as well as our recommendations document not to focus on the species level, but rather focus on the community level. And by providing high quality habitat, you can support a variety and diversity of species that can be sustained in the urban environment. So from our biological inventory, we provided a number of recommendations to future developers within the precinct, And I have to say that Landmark and Qualico were really great at taking these recommendations into the precinct plan, and we see that. And so kind of the 4 overarching recommendations, and we'd like you to review the recommendations document as well as to preserve the different habitat types within Ridgewood type to make sure that there's representations of all the different habitat types. So wetland, and we see that as a naturalized stormwater ponds, grassland habitat, and the different types of forest habitat. Mitigate, including coordinating timing of construction so that you're not affecting certain species at their key breeding times, as well as focus on fewer large rather than many small habitat patches to avoid the edge effect of urban environments. Creation and enhancement, and as I said before, there is room for enhancing habitat, and I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but by having